guys, so I thought this afternoon I would talk about something that I find quite interesting, and that's whether or not PayPal works in Rwanda. And the reason I find this interesting is because I think it has huge implications for Rwanda's participation in global e-commerce, because right now Rwanda is really championing becoming the sort of technological hub of East Africa. Meanwhile, you've got something like PayPal, which allows international payments to vendors and people selling online that just doesn't work in Rwanda. And it's not just Rwanda, it doesn't work in several other countries as well, which I'll get onto a bit later. And I just find it kind of an interesting challenge because PayPal has been around for over 20 years. You know, it's an established and highly trusted means of online payment around the world for millions and millions of people every day. Meanwhile, Rwanda, who's trying to enter sort of global marketplaces and e-commerce, can't because of that. You know, they have to find other inventive ways of trying to receive money from people paying internationally, which again I'll get onto a bit later. Now, many people in Rwanda think that PayPal works here, but works is a very subjective verb because it has a function. So that function is that you can open a PayPal account and you can preload it. You can use a credit card or a debit card to put money onto your account so that you can buy things online internationally and then, you know, get that thing shipped to Rwanda. And that is indeed one function of PayPal. But I think most of us would agree that one of the greatest benefits of PayPal is getting paid through PayPal. So at the moment, it's a very one-way street in Rwanda. You can load money onto your PayPal account and you can send it out of the country to buy things. But people outside the country can't really pay you for things that you create. So it's not sort of an all-encompassing e-commerce solution in that respect. And nobody's too sure why this is, because, I mean, is it the government saying, no, we don't want PayPal, which is possible because they said, no, we don't want Uber. When Uber tried to come to Rwanda, they said no. You know, they could have said no to PayPal. Or is it PayPal saying, no, we don't want to work here? Because when you look at the list of other countries that it doesn't work in very well, I think maybe DRC is one of them. I definitely think Chad was one of them. So there are certain countries that, I don't know, maybe don't have an economic, haven't reached an economic point. Okay, let's investigate this properly. So to find out whether or not you've got full PayPal services in your country or not, you need to go to this PayPal page, and I'll put the link below. Then click on your country flag, and you'll usually get one of two messages. So if you're in a country like Kenya that does have full PayPal services, you will get the message, PayPal is for everyone who pays or gets paid. But if you're in Rwanda, or a country that doesn't have full PayPal services, you'll get a slightly different message, which says PayPal is for everyone who pays online. So who pays online versus who pays and gets paid. So I did a little tally of this, and of the 50 countries listed in Africa, only 13 of them have got full PayPal access. So that's less than a third of countries in Africa. I compared this to the 49 countries listed in Europe, and I've put a cross next to the ones that definitely say that you can't receive. There's a couple of grey areas in there. There's Poland, and it was quite difficult to tell from what was written on their page. It was a bit tricky to tell with some of them because a lot of these pages are written in the local language. But definitely North Macedonia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, which is the only country in Europe, I believe, to still have the death penalty, ignoring Russia, which we'll get to in a second. And the one that made me laugh was Vatican City. So maybe it's something to do with financial transparency that's the decider. I'm not too sure. But Russia was a weird one. I think Russia's included under Europe because part of it is on the European continent and part of it's on the Asian continent. But what made me pause when I looked at the Russian site is I just assumed that they would be a hard no at the moment, given all of the financial sanctions on them because of the war. But when you go to their section, it seems to suggest that you can still send money, which I find a bit questionable. I'm assuming that's maybe not been updated recently. But the other nice one is that you can send to Ukraine with no fees. So any transactions through PayPal in Ukraine at the moment are currently free. But even if I've missed a couple of crosses out here, it's still a massive disparity compared to the African continent. I don't know what it is, because I also know that my bank in the UK flat out refuses to transfer money from my UK account into a Rwandan bank account. They just refuse to do it. They won't do it. And again, I don't know why, because they won't tell me. So, I'm left finding creative solutions, as are people trying to get involved in e-commerce in Rwanda. So at the moment, if you are somebody in Rwanda who is trying to engage in e-commerce, or if you're a business who wants people to prepay before they turn up, say, for a tour or a vehicle rental. And even if you're a charity, because another massive function of PayPal is the donate button, where people can donate straight into your account. You can't use any of those payment systems with PayPal here. Now, there are other options. There's something called Flutterwave, which sort of works a bit like PayPal and allows people to pay you online. But again, I think it's into an account and then you have to go and withdraw. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into it or used it before. I think one of the biggest problems with alternatives like Flutterwave is, in countries that do have fully functioning PayPal, would you use it? Because, if somebody gave me a PayPal button, or they offered me another button where I had to go off and sign up and start a new account and give somebody else my card details that I've probably never really heard of before, I am 100% always going to go with PayPal. I know what they are. They cover me in the event of fraud, and my experience with them in the past has been largely positive. So I think you're up against that problem is if you find another branded solution, are most of the people who are going to be coming internationally to use your site ever going to have heard of that solution? And are they going to want to go through the whole blah-de-blah-de-blah of setting up another account and giving their credit card details to somebody else that they've maybe never heard of before? I don't know about that. But the other way around it is, up until recently, a really good solution was a company called Heptapay. Heptapay are brilliant because all you had to do was to take your credit card and the phone number of the person you were sending it to, and from anywhere in the world you could pay to that number's mobile money account, which is what we use here. So instead of PayPal, we've got something called mobile money, which I've talked about elsewhere. And so, providing you don't make a mistake with the phone number, then you can send to a Rwandan vendor's mobile money account using a credit card from anywhere in the world. So you could buy online, send them the payment, but there is no payment protection with that. So you've really got to already trust the business that you're paying, or it needs to be for such a small amount that if it was a con, you could write it off. And the other way around it is something called World Remit. So World Remit's pretty good, and you can either send money directly to somebody's mobile money account like you would with Heptapay, or you can send cash pickup. So there's a few locations where they can go and pick up the actual cash. Those are both solutions, but again, it's like everybody in the Western world knows what PayPal is and trusts it, pretty implicitly. And it's so simple, the money goes in and out of your account. You're not having to faff around finding a vendor who can withdraw the money for you, or having to preload your account with the amount of money that you need to spend. You don't have to think about any of that noise. So I find it kind of a bit saddening, especially for people who are, trying to get into the global e-commerce scene, who have a product to sell in Rwanda and want to sell it to the rest of the world. And I think not being able to use all of PayPal's functions, especially the receiving money, to only be able to send money out of the country and not to bring money into the country, seems kind of defeating to me. But again, I don't know why. I don't know whether it is because the government says no to PayPal or whether it is because PayPal says no to Rwanda. If you're in finance, I would love to know the answer to this. So if you do know, if you could drop the comment below, I appreciate it, because I think a lot of people are wondering this question. But as well, I do acknowledge that suddenly having PayPal probably wouldn't fix everything. I don't know if people would use it. I think maybe only I want to use it because I've used it all my life and I know how it's supposed to work, and it's always done a really good job for me. So I kind of know that maybe there isn't the need or the desire to use PayPal here in the same way that there is in other countries where e-commerce goes on a lot more regularly. But I still can't help thinking that there must be a lot of craftspeople here that if they were in the UK, they would have been on Etsy years ago. You know, they would have been online selling their goods, they'd have their website, and they'd be taking money, and they can't at the moment, not in the same way. But I also acknowledge the fact that there's more than just the payment system needs to be fixed. One of the other massive barriers to entering into e-commerce is the postal system. Now, I've talked about the postal system before, but it is it's several decades out of date for a modern e-commerce marketplace. So, you know, you can't recycle any packaging at home. You can't pack anything at home. You have to take everything down to the post office. The person in the post office has to pack it for you, usually into an ill-fitting box. And the process of posting something in Rwanda is laborious. It takes a lot of time. You can't just pop in. You can't like print off your stamps at home, package it up, take it down, and off it goes. You've got to go through all of these steps, and they are long and they are convoluted, and, you know, it doesn't usually move that quickly, and that's for one parcel. So if you imagine that you've actually got an e-commerce business and you're selling all over the world and you've got to go down there with these parcels, you're going to spend a day in there waiting to send things, and it's going to be really expensive. And not only is it going to be really expensive, but it's going to take days, sometimes weeks, for whatever it is you're sending to get to where it's going. And, you know, in the West, we're so used to next day delivery. I can order something from anywhere in the UK and get it next morning, sometimes from Europe and get it in a couple of days, you know. And, you know, there are so many packaging options for me to package my things myself, like, you know, Jiffy bags have never really caught on here. In fact, if you go to the post office, there isn't a single shelf selling any kind of packaging at all. So that's problematic. Even if you can accept payment for the things that you want to sell, you've then got to get them to that person. Now, you could use DHL, but DHL are eye-wateringly expensive. And if you've got to add like another $50 to, like, say, a small woven basket, nobody's going to buy from you. And so, you know, if the only guaranteed way to get something there in a sensible time is DHL, nobody's going to buy from you. And if you put it in the standard post, you're going to spend your life in the post office. It's going to take forever to deliver. People might think that it's not coming. They might think that they've been ripped off. They might try and claim their money back through PayPal before the items got there. It's all a bit difficult. So really, I mean, the two things for e-commerce is you've got to have PayPal, really, because the rest of the world knows what it is and trusts it, and it delivers money straight into a bank account. And you've got to have a way of getting your goods out of the country in a sensible amount of time for, you know, an affordable shipping and packaging cost. And I think until those things are kind of sorted out, e-commerce faces a lot of problems, especially for small craftspeople and small vendors who have a lot to contribute. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. If you work in e-commerce, if you have an online business in Rwanda, I'd like to know what the solutions are that you've found. Again, I'd love to know what the reason for there being no linked PayPal accounts in Rwanda are. And as well, if you're in a country like Rwanda that doesn't have full PayPal service, how do you get around that when you're trying to sell things online?